7.
Exciting times. 7 down. It's going good. Last week's was pretty good. Emily, what did we talk about last week?
Oh, I wasn't here.
Emily, did you listen to the podcast last week?
No, I don't.
Called out.
So the last couple weeks, I think, were some of the best ones yet. So last week, to fill you in, it was...
Is that... I don't know. I feel like it's not that weird that I don't listen to the podcast.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
I know we're all saying great things. I'll check it out, though, the ones I missed.
Okay. All right. So last week, we did like a Q&A kind of style thing. We had I posted in the morning. I think I woke up and I was like, I have no clue what the fuck we're going to talk about today. So I posted asking for questions, and shockingly, we got like 7 very good different questions than we were used to getting.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So they all wound up being like 20-minute long answers. Yeah. So it wound up being a long one. It was like 2 hours, and like we definitely could have went longer also on it. So that was good. Then we started reading this guy right here, Love Them by Leading Them. It's kind of a cheesy title, but it is a good book.
Just the introduction. I was very impressed.
It was pretty good. So we'll probably break into that a little bit today. Are you familiar with this book, Emily?
I've definitely seen it. Like, I follow Sean O'Shea online.
He posts all the time about it. Yeah. So it's basically, from my understanding, when he came out with it, it was how long have you been following him for?
I feel like I've seen him go through some transitions, like 4 years maybe.
Okay, so a while. Yeah. So he used to be real. I feel like one thing that got him really popular is like he used to do a lot of blogging and like, like not long form, but like just like really well written posts, right? I feel like he was one of the guys that started doing a lot of the like social media every day. I'm posting about a topic where I'm just writing about it. That was kind of his medium for a little bit there. And this book, from my understanding, was he essentially took all of those blogs he had been writing and just put them into a book and just kind of reworded some of them and everything. So it's not like a continuous book where like you're following a story going through it. Literally the entire book is like blog post.
I've heard mixed reviews about it.
What have you heard?
Oops, not on silent.
Wow.
Sorry.
What did I say?
So I just remember someone saying, I think it was because of that format that they didn't like the book, that it was like choppy and kind of all over the place. But then I see like reviews online for it and people are really into it. I think
it depends on how you're going into it, right? Like, so if you're going into it with the understanding that it's like, I'm going to read a couple passages and then put it away, that's great, right? Like I have like, are you guys familiar? Are you familiar with Tim Ferriss?
I am not.
Oh my God. You guys got to get hip with it. Tim Ferriss is like a big time author and blogger, right? Okay. And he's like essentially coined himself as like the human guinea pig. So like he's got. Have you heard of the book like The 4-Hour Work Week or The 4-Hour Body or The 4-Hour Chef or The 4-Hour Anything?
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. So he essentially, his whole thing is he experiments on things and uses himself a human guinea pig, and he's kind of coined like accelerated learning, which means how do I take a new thing and how do I break it down in a way where I could learn it as efficiently and as quickly as possible? And he's done it with thing after thing after thing after thing. Where like, again, the 4-Hour Work Week was not intended to be like, here's how you work 4 hours a week. It was just like, how do you maximize your productivity and your time to be able to have free time to do all the other things that you want to do in your life? The 4-Hour Body was how do you essentially get in shape and maintain being in shape utilizing the least amount of effort as possible? But it was like super like science driven, like really good, statistics and stuff. The 4-Hour Chef was a book broken down to teach you all of the skills you need to be like a world-class chef, utilizing like very little time, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
So he's got some books out that he put out lately that are less instructional books and more like he has a podcast as well. It's like one of the most downloaded podcasts on the internet, right under Joe Rogan. And he interviews people and essentially dissects all of their habits and their routines and stuff like that they do on a daily basis that he thinks makes them successful, right? Anyways, long story short here, he's got 2 books. One is called Tools of Titans. One is called Tribe of Mentors. Tools of Titans was basically breaking down the best things that he learned from each person through his interviews with them. And it's like a fucking huge book, dude. It's like, I think it's like 600, 700 pages, something like that. And it's like this, where it's bite-sizable. It's like 3 pages at a time, right? Yep. 3 pages on one person, then you can put it away. Then you could open it up, 3 pages on another person, then put it away, right? So if you're looking for it to be that book you sit down and read in like a week or whatever where you
Yeah.
just burn through it and you're like learning a story or something like that. It's not like that.
Yeah.
But if you want to get little good piece of information, put it away. Little good piece of information, put it away, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's how this book should be viewed, right? Where you could pick it up at any point. You could literally open it up to anywhere and, read a passage, right? How to mess up a dog, right? The hardest thing for both owners and trainers, right? The gift of no, right? The World Series of Dog Training, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So I think it's cool like that. My biggest quarrel with it when I first got it was just look at the way it's written and look at how there's like text sideways and like different fucking colors and shapes. And like it gets really wild and it gave me a headache when I was reading it. Right?
Yeah, I find that kind of visually appealing, but I could see that.
That triggers me.
I could see that.
Vertical words.
Vertical words that are written in that fashion. Like I'm not a big fan of that. But that has nothing to do with the actual content in the book. That just has to do with my visual likings.
Personal feel,
my personal preference. But aside from that, I think it's a really good book. We were kind of talking last time a little bit. I think Sean does a really good job of dissecting things down in a modern way for your everyday owner. So, Josh and I were talking about, he does a lot of comparisons between like, raising children and raising dogs. And he does a lot of like speaking directly to the issues we're seeing now. And like where Caesar, he's kind of preaching the same kind of stuff, but he's doing it in a little bit different of a fashion where it's spoken more from that like, oh, like this is really beneficial information, but I'm going to say it in this nuanced way, like that kind of like holier than thou kind of way.
Yeah.
And trying to be almost like too fancy with it, like and whispery with it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I actually, as we were dissecting that book, it's interesting to like break it down with everyone because I never noticed that when I've read it before. So,
and I think that was the cool thing about us kind of going through some of the book was we were able to look at that stuff and then kind of interpret it in a way that is intended for everybody else. Mm-hmm. But I think that this one is kind of written in that way where anybody could really read it and get it. Yeah. I know he wrote this as like this book should be going out with like our training clients as like this is like your reference guide, right? Or your manual kind of thing. Yeah. Which I think is pretty cool. So anyways, we started digging. I can't talk today. We started digging into that book a little bit, and it was pretty good. We answered a bunch of questions. The one before that, did you listen to the one before that? Probably not.
Oh my goodness. Just attacked right now.
So are you hip to the button pushing dogs?
No.
Like the soundboard, like I
Oh,
want
yes.
food.
The TikToks.
I want water.
Yeah,
I
what do you
want
think about
this.
that? You guys already addressed it.
We talked about it in depth.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about it?
If
You had to look at this from a dog trainer's point of view right now and figure out, is that legitimate or is it not legitimate and why? What would you say?
So I feel like, that's interesting. I feel like a dog could probably pick it up, especially if like they're pushing that button, they get a reward, just that constant repetition. But I don't think that they're understanding like the words that they're.
You're correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of, right? So basically, the way we broke it down is a lot of these soundboards are broken up into like sections, where a section of the board, like these 6 buttons, all equate to something really positive happening, right? So yes, the dog is making the correlation that if I go up to these buttons and I push one of these, something fun happens, but they have no fucking clue what that fun thing is going to be. They just know it's going to be something that they like, right? Mm-hmm. So they hit them randomly, and then when you get into these really intricate ones, like there's this person online, Hunger, that like does these like 26 button soundboards and stuff with her dog, where the dog just hits random ones, and then she'll sit there on the videos and like interpret what she actually meant, not what she hit, right?
Oh, okay.
So it's all fluffed. Whatever. We're not. We've dug into this a lot, so we're not going to get super crazy with it. But it's. I think it's kind of bullshit. I think that there are ways to do it successfully, right?
Yeah.
By having singular buttons near singular things that the dog can make the correlation that this button next to this thing means it will trigger this thing, or this button next to this thing will trigger this certain thing. I don't think they can correlate a bunch of the exact same button and understand the difference between all of them, because there's nothing that distinguishes the difference between them, right?
Yeah, especially when a dog has that much drive too towards something, they're not like sitting there clarifying which button. Yeah,
Yeah.
got it.
Okay. What's new? Anything? Josh? What's new in your world?
Oh, snow.
A lot of snow.
Lots of snow. Not a whole lot. Actually been staying pretty busy. Finishing the rally in that we talked about last week.
Did you say they had 2 weeks to do it or something?
Yeah, but they actually finished it early, so they're going to be done on Monday. So I got to go over there.
Yep.
And take those photos, and then maybe a new Starbucks build that I'm getting.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, photos. For
Are those all just
Trim.
franchised, the Starbucks, or are they
Owned?
I
believe
chain?
they're still chain owned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
I don't know if Starbucks even has a franchise.
I have no idea.
I don't think they do, because I think he's specifically out from the company.
Yeah.
Contracted out by the company. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's
really cool.
is it the contractor that reached out to you then?
Yeah.
That's sweet.
Yeah, he finally got like someone to run his website and stuff, and that's the guy I'm talking to now, because he was just like too busy to ever get a hold of me. So he's like, "Here, I'm just going to give you this guy's number. And you guys figure it out." So
That's actually super cool to think about. I didn't even equate. I would have thought, like restaurants and stuff like that, like the actual business owners would be wanting that. But like, I didn't even think that like all of those photos and stuff you're taking are showcasing the contractor's work.
yeah,
Right? Not the business's work. So yeah, I'm sure the business would like to have some photos of like, here's our new Starbucks location.
Yeah.
But that contractor really wants those photos of this is the project we did. This is what we were able to do.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really interesting. So have you thought a lot into that? I mean, have you started then considering looking at like all of the different like Scalish Construction, I know, is a huge one right now in Cleveland that does a lot of the hip new build outs and
Yeah.
stuff. Like, have you started reaching out to a lot of those places?
I have not yet, but I think I'm going to get a couple more with him, and then be like, "Hey, look, like I've helped this construction business do A, B, and C," and show, their before, the after, and then the during process of, like his employees building out something.
Yeah.
So,
That's I really didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
That's
I know.
a cool way to look at it, though, and that almost like broadens your spectrum a lot, because they're
Yeah.
going to be working for all of the different companies as far as build outs and stuff.
yeah,
are concerned.
exactly. I mean, when I talked to him in September, he had no idea. Like, he was like, "I'm building a website, but I don't know what I'm going to put on it." He had a web developer building it, and they were like, "Hey, we need content." And he's like, "I don't have anything."
Yeah.
He was like, "I have zero photos." He's like, "I have cell phone pictures."
Yeah.
Obviously, like, that's not what I want to convey to these other big companies, because he wants to get more corporations like Starbucks,
Yep.
on board with him. So he wants high quality
Hell yeah.
HDR photos. So yeah, I think it's almost like an untapped avenue. It's
What's another one spinning into that is like designers, like interior design. Like I look at, so Kara Durgan, right?
Yeah.
So we hired her when we first moved into this house just to help us figure out like where all our furniture was going to go and how to set up that like main room in the back and everything. And at the time, like I went off her because I knew her, obviously, and knew she was very talented at what she did, but she doesn't have a website. She doesn't have a social media presence as far as like, here's the work that I do and all that kind of stuff. It's just referral based.
yeah.
Dude, like that's somebody that it's like, fuck, like if she had some photos of like, here's the design work I do, and like high quality ones, not just like, here I took this cell phone picture.
Yeah.
That'd be sweet. I follow this page. It's a company based out of Cleveland called Sapphire Pear. And Sapphire Pear is a design company. They do all sorts of different work. They do like home design as far as like remodels and stuff like that. They do interior designing. They do work for businesses and stuff like that. And dude, the stuff that they post on their page is just like mind-boggling, like the design work that they do. And it's like you could just tell based on their social media presence, because of the professional before and after photos and stuff that they post, like how legitimate they are. And you could tell like they get all these like out-of-state clients that they get shipped out to. They did this one in like, I think it was like Charleston or something like that. That was like, looked like it was at this mansion. It was like a total like house remodel that they did and stuff. It was so cool. Stuff like that. Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, especially something as, design work like that. I mean, it's a visual product.
For sure. Yeah.
And I think it is such a mind-blowing before and after usually. People like me have no idea where to put furniture or anything. And if I had someone come in and just overhaul what you could do with a space, I mean, obviously all those like HDGTV people, like, was it Chip and Joanne or whatever?
Chip and JoJo,
yeah.
Gaines.
Yeah. I mean, the work that they, like, if they hadn't became like this huge media presence, I mean, they would be
They wouldn't
nothing.
have gotten that show. They wouldn't have gotten, now they're in Target, like their line of like Magnolia Gardens or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I'm pretty sure it just all started from like a blog post and stuff like that.
That's super cool. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Emily, you've had a little time off. How you been working with your dogs and stuff?
Yeah, I have actually.
What have you been working on with them?
So I saw this thing. So I've been really working on Bee's crate stuff, which
Is she? I don't remember her being terrible in it. I remember you said she would have some accidents in it and stuff.
Yeah, like kind of inconsistently.
Bee is a dog Emily just got, by the way, so she is kind of currently training her. So.
Yeah, and since I have been home more, it's been really important to just kind of like set that structure up, and also like I live in a pretty, not a small apartment, but small for 2 dogs and a person too.
Sure.
So just also trying to like keep her mind active on top of working on the crate stuff.
Yep.
Just saying, we've had I think 4 accident-free crate times like in a row. So knock on wood.
Hell yeah, you gotta take it one day at a time.
Yeah, it's been good.
Did you kind of like have you pinpointed like any triggers or something with it that you've been able to isolate? Like, what have you been doing to help her be more successful in it? Because I feel like that's something people struggle a lot with, right? And especially when you have a dog that's that bad with it. Like a lot of dogs from like kennel situations and stuff, they just get used to going in their pen. Mm-hmm. And once you get a dog like that, it's like they call it reverse housebreaking. Like it's such a pain in the ass for them to get over it, for anybody.
Yeah, it's definitely been a challenge, and just kind of like troubleshooting that. So really, I knew this from the foster. Her biggest thing is when you actually leave.
Yep.
Like she can. So at first, I just made sure that she was solid about going into the crate every time. Mm-hmm. That she could stay in the crate with the door open while I was home, and then after a few hours of that successful, I would start just like leaving for a second, coming back, and then offering a correction if she came out of it. So I think that that's actually been a huge help, is making sure that one, we're doing that, like she's understanding that there's a consequence if she comes out of it when I leave.
Yep.
But also just having like that routine of utilizing the crate daily.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because I feel like just to be super personal about it, I started seeing myself trying to avoid having to crate her at times. Yeah, because
I used to do that with Vinny, because Vinny used to be so bad in the crate,
Yeah, and that mess when you come home, like the last thing you want to deal with.
The last thing, yeah.
The only thing that I've noticed that I guess I'm a little bit, I'd be curious what you guys think. I feel like Honeycomb is kind of getting like residual anxiety, and like she has never had a problem when I leave. I don't crate her. Mm-hmm. And I know what the answer is, crate her. But I'm just surprised by that. Do you think that's a thing?
Well, what are you, I guess, like what specifically are you seeing, and where are you seeing it? Like, what do you think sparked it if you haven't seen it before?
I think Bee spins the whole time.
Yeah.
Kind of like of anything. And like I'll come home and Honeycomb.
Oh, you're saying like she'll get anxious from being around the anxious energy of Bee, you think? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Mm-hmm. Mm. Have you ever seen that?
For sure.
Okay.
I mean, obviously working on the root of it, which is calming down the other dog, is beneficial. Now, let me ask you this, because I have not really handled Bee a whole lot. Like when you're at the facility and you bring her in crate, she seems fine, obviously. Like you were saying, it seems like the triggers when you actually leave. So she'll spin. What else do you see that she does in the crate? Anything specifically? Like, does she bark or whine or like anything like that?
She doesn't really she does like this weird noise once in a while and just be like, ah, like it's like a little baby dinosaur noise. But otherwise, no, she's not vocal. So like there's not much to correct for except for her physically leaving the crate.
Spinning. That's what I did that was the biggest thing that helped Vinny, was the pacing in the crate, correcting for that. I didn't do a down. I didn't do a sit or anything like that. I just corrected when he span. Is that a word? Spun.
Spun.
Yeah.
Corrected when he spun. Sounds weird. And what happened is that in itself chilled him out, right? Because the vocalization, all that kind of stuff with him, it was so subconscious. Like he would just like make these like just noises, like he was just like in such distress. Like he's like, you know, like it was horrible, right? But you couldn't correct it because it was like just like coming out of him, right? It wasn't like he was really aware of it. So I remember one day a couple years ago, I just started correcting for the spinning, and again, like. Vinny still, like, if you leave him in there long enough, like, will still get himself worked up and stuff, and will still revert back to those old ways, but, like, it's decreased to the point where, like, the separation issues that he was having with me are, like, near gone. They're not related around me anymore. Like, he's downstairs right now, right? And,
right.
Like, he's chill, right? If he's, you know, Josh, every podcast we've done so far, he's been in his crate. It's typically just been you and I here. And like every now and then you'll hear him start to like get up and spin around down there. But like for the most part, like he just chills out, right? And it's because I've been so consistent about giving the correction for just that specific thing and letting the rest of it just ride out, right? And I found that helped a lot. And Vinny, you know, notoriously would have accidents and stuff in his crate all the time over the same exact kind of stuff, right? He would get himself so worked up in the crate that it was like he would just lose control of his bladder, right? And piss all over in it. And it was the most frustrating, annoying thing to come home to as well. And stopping the spinning pretty much stopped that, right? Where it's been a hot minute since he's had one, really. So, yeah, I mean, things like that helped quite a bit. As far as the residual stuff with Honeycomb, create some separation if you really need to. Like, do you crate her when you're not home, or do you just leave her loose?
I haven't crated her in a long time
That's
because
fine.
she's always been fine with it. I think I might start to because she's getting destructive. Like I'll come home and she's like,
okay, that was going to be my question: is when you see her getting anxious, like what sorts of things are you noticing?
I'll come home and she's like a cartoon character. Like her eyes are like googly and she's like panting and like she's like, I think a lot of people would think that was like their dog being excited, but like I find her energy when I walk in the door to be like I'm opposed to it. You know, just like,
sure.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Like, and I also feel bad about it to some degree because like clearly I need to do something with that.
Yeah,
but
sure.
Yeah, just I think creating her,
creating her. Yeah. I mean, is B's crate in like a separate area of the apartment? I know you said it's not big, but like, is it in like a different room or something where she's?
It's in the living room.
Okay.
So, yeah, like I have a kitchen, a hallway, and a living room in my room.
Yeah. Is there like so one thing that, you know, hits me right away is like, can you put B's crate somewhere where you can close her into a room and have some separation between her and Honeycomb? That way, Honeycomb's not just like sitting there like fuck, like you're right there and you're just so much. You know?
Well, the thing with that is like. The peeing and spinning thing, like I have a rug in my room and my bed frame's also fabric, so like if she's like
for sure.
spraying pee everywhere, I'd rather just not.
Yeah.
But I do think like there's no harm in creating Honeycomb or even just putting her in my room.
Yeah. That's actually a good idea is somehow creating the separation. And then the other thing is like when I've seen some dogs that have like had like these like reverse housebreaking issues, like sometimes you really need to go to the extreme as far as like when you know you're going to be leaving the house, like cutting the water like hours before you actually leave, so there's physically nothing in her.
You told me that,
you know,
and then also like giving a little bit more time for the bathroom breaks too.
Yeah.
Because I think you said like knowing the signs of like she goes pee twice and like poops, and making sure that those things actually happen.
Yeah, Now, you've heard me talk about this too. Like, I'm typically not a big fan of like withholding water because I think that you can create a monster by doing that. Like, you know, a lot of times we look at dogs that are, say, having accidents in the house, right? And we think, oh, it needs less water, so it doesn't need to go to the bathroom as much. Where I would say the more you withhold that water, the more we're teaching the dog to just gorge it when it's down. And I use the human example of yesterday I was super dehydrated and I drank like 2 of my like huge Yeti water bottles like over the course of one lesson. And I think I peed like 6 times over the course of the next like hour. You know what I mean? It's the same with dogs. If you teach them then to gorge the water, they're going to have to go even more frequently, right? So the thing that I did with Vinny initially, because he was having a lot of issues with that, is I would not give him like basically any water in the morning if I was getting ready to leave the house. And then as soon as I got home, I would fill up the water bowl and I would let him drink until he no longer wanted to drink. And what happened is after the first couple times of doing that, he realized that he wasn't going to drink at all. It was going to stay there, and it kind of stopped some of the gorging.
Yeah, I remember that was a huge thing with Vinny.
Yeah.
You always said, like, keep the water bucket filled so they don't have that.
Yeah, because you'll teach them to do that, right?
Yeah.
But initially, when you're trying to gain some leverage, the number one goal is not necessarily can I teach the dog not to gorge the water. The number one goal is can I teach them to build the pattern of, like, not going to the bathroom in the crate, right? So cutting that. So what I would do is, like, if you know you're going to be leaving, like, in the middle of the day or in the morning or something like that, don't give any water to her in the morning. Let her be successful in the crate, and then let her have as much as she wants in the evening. But then just be aware of if she is gorging it, you're going to have to take her out, like, every hour to go to the bathroom.
Right.
And then just do that until you have, like, 2 weeks of success. Then start giving, like, a little bit of water in the morning, and then following that same procedure and stuff.
Yeah. No, that makes a whole lot of sense.
I think that would help. I don't know. Again, like, if there's nothing in there for them to go, they're not going to go. And also, you got to factor in if the dog needs to go to the bathroom, like, maybe she actually needs to go, right? And that's going to make her even more anxious in the crate, right? It's like a fucking cycle.
Yeah.
So you got to find the balance of, like, what combination is going to be correct to gain the leverage, then try to transition once you've built on some success to, like, let's find some, like, normalcy as quickly as possible.
Yeah. No, I think that's actually a really good point, too, about, like, the normalcy aspect of it. I think anyone could relate to this, like, working with dogs all day, like, you're gonna, and especially dealing with, like, behavior modification. I think it was easy for me to get in the habit of how do I just deal with this problem instead of just, like, how do I teach her to kind of exist and
work
like
through the issue.
And just building, because she's a fearful dog, so just building that relationship. So I've been trying to do, like, some more engagement stuff with her, just keeping her, like, that whole circle of, like, keeping her engaged, like, making sure she's not just bored. So she has those moments, like, I've been doing, like, a trick a week. I saw a challenge for that. Right now we're working on her bowing.
Nice.
Because she can't really get out right now, like, just because of the weather, we can't do a whole lot of, like, active stuff. And I feel like just making sure that when you are dealing with behavioral stuff, like, that you're still just allowing them to be that dog.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, 90% of my dog's day is just, like, hanging out, right? I really, and I kind of feel like I've taken it to the extreme. You know what's interesting? I was talking with, I think it was Paige, maybe, because she just got a dog, and I was we were talking about, like, what kind of training she was going to do with her dog and this and that. She's like, like, I want to do some training, but I don't know if I want to take it to, like, the extreme with it. And I was like, yeah, I get that. I was like, each one of us, so me, you, Bridget, Krista, Seamus, everybody, right? We all live such different lives with our dogs, right? And I think one thing that's really important is understanding that, like, that's okay, right? You don't have to have the relationship with your dogs like I have with mine, where mine is, like, literally the extreme of, like, you're either like 100% militant, like, on your shit, listening, understanding the rules and consequences, and like just robot dog, like, right? Or you're 100% free to do literally, like, whatever the fuck that you want to do, and, like, I'm just gonna let you do that, and I'm not gonna be a part of it, and you're just gonna literally just be a dog, right? Like, that's the way that I've always operated with my dogs, where, you even saw, like, Vera and Deli, like, when you walked in, they're running up to you, they're all excited and happy and stuff like that. And it's like, I don't give a fuck about any of that kind of stuff, but if I ask you to do something, you have to do it like that, right?
Yeah.
There's not this in between. Krista, I feel like, lives similarly with hers, just it's more like the militant side of things, or, like, the very affectionate, like, kind of, like, bonding relationship kind of relationship, where you have much more of, like, a holistic approach to, like, with your dogs, where you guys are very kind of emotionally in tune with each other, I feel like. And both your dogs as well as you, I feel like, kind of feed off of that a little bit, which is good. Bridget is just the little dog queen, where she has that relationship of, like, I mean, even things like she posted something the other day that I saw that, something I would never do with my dogs, but, like, she enjoys doing, where she has that, like, like, we have, like, treat time, and, like, we do all these different things, stuff like that. And that's fine, right? There's nothing wrong with that, as long as you have the foundation of, if I need you to be under control, you can be, right? And something I try to do is, when I'm working with clients, is I try to understand, like, what type of relationship do these owners want to have with this dog, And I'll try to coach them as much as possible through like, this is why it's important to be able to have that really strict structure and everything. But you have to keep in mind, like, this person is only going to be this way, right? So how do I fit that structure and that rules into that relationship they want to ultimately have with their dog?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think at one point for me, I really pushed Honeycomb to a point, like, just I think as a newer trainer and just wanting to kind of fit into that mold. And I do appreciate that that's how our company's ethics is almost like just like letting, like, kind of training for us, you know, training what fits our lifestyle.
Yeah, for sure. You know, Josh, what kind of relationship do you have with your dog? That's half a serious question. Like when you got a dog, like what did you want out of it? You know?
I mean, you've asked me this already.
Have I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, we want a dog that will listen to us, but also let him be a dog. I guess we immediately started training him, like right off the bat. Mm-hmm. And then we made this structure system, like you said, that if you listen, then you're good to do these things. Like, you're good to have some freedom. Mm-hmm. I mean, we immediately started crate training. We immediately started like recalls, stuff like that when he was young, you know, just to get him to start listening. And now he enjoys the freedoms of not having to be in the crate at night, but he has to be in the crate when we leave, stuff like that. I don't know. We have a balance, I feel, that, you know, we have a dog that you can basically do what you want. Like, it's cool. You have fun. I mean, I don't know. We're not super strict on him, but he also knows that when it's time to be serious, it's like, okay, bring it in.
Yep.
So I don't know if that actually answered your question.
No,
but
I think it does. I mean, what sorts of things do you like to do with him?
We take him on hikes, a lot of hikes. Just play. I mean, a lot of play time with him. Mm-hmm. He gets way too many treats probably, but I mean, I guess our approach is he's more of just like, not like a family member, but like not a person, you know?
Yeah.
Like, we still know that he's a dog and we don't treat him as like the human.
Yeah. I think that's cool. I think when I got a dog, and I look at this the same way, equating this to something we were both a part of, music, right? Mm-hmm. So I feel like you have people that are very creative and like in tune with that side of things, and people that enjoy like the process of doing certain things, right? Yeah. Like when I was in a band, I always say, like, I always considered myself a musician, obviously. Like, playing music is fun and creating music is fun and stuff like that. But I think a part of the reason why I currently don't really play music in my free time anymore is because it was much less about the creative process from the music standpoint, and it was much more about the process of like putting the pieces together and building a band and trying to create something that's successful and all of that. Like, that was my drive and all of that. And with dogs, this is a really weird comparison I'm about to make here right now. but with dogs, it's interesting because, like, I obviously love my dogs, right? Like, you naturally develop this relationship with them and you're emotional with them and stuff like that. But I love the process of teaching them things and living a harmonious life and trying to create this kind of, like, I don't know, like system of like, this is how I kind of create harmony with my pack to help people kind of do the same thing. And it's weird because I feel like that's brought me closer to them, obviously, like from a relationship standpoint. But at the same time, I still very much view everything that I do with them as far as like my brain is always in that training and like, how do I improve on this and make this better and like make their lives better kind of thing, for the sake of being able to project that out to everybody else. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
It's a really weird comparison, but like, I feel like that's why my relationship with them is very much like that, right? Like, I'm okay with like never cuddling with my dogs or anything, because like I want them to live a good life and like be happy and stuff. But I understand that all of those things aren't going to provide that. But I continue to train and do all of these things with them to provide that for them, but also to be able to provide those things to other people so that I can continue to learn and improve. So it's almost kind of like an egotistical way, I guess, of looking at it if you break it down, right? Like, I'm kind of doing it for myself, I guess, but also for them. I don't know.
I mean, I just think that just comes kind of with the territory of being a trainer.
Sure.
Especially when someone like you've been doing it for so long. I mean, you just kind of get into that mode and that mindset of like, this is how I need to be with my dogs.
Sure.
You know?
You looked like you had something to say.
I do. I feel like I have like 5 different things to say, and I'm not
let's
really
keep rolling
sure.
on this. Say them.
So I guess
it's an interesting conversation.
I don't want to like forget what I was gonna say.
Do you need paper and a pen?
No. I want to come back to what you said about like the expectation of being a trainer. But do you think you would live different with your dogs if you? So you know how you're not really playing music.
Sure.
Do you think you would still hold your dog? Would you do anything different if you weren't training anymore?
Well, I look at when I first got Vera, there was a very short period of time of me like owning a dog as just an owner before I was training. Like I think it was honestly like I had Vera for maybe 6 months to a year. I don't even think it was that long, honestly. And because as soon as I got her, before I actually even adopted her, I signed up for training classes, and I started training. I trained with 3 different trainers, and kind of 3 different trainers, like 2.5. And the third one that I started working with, all within that first year, I started working for, right? And as soon as I started working for him, it was such a different style of training, right? Like it was the Michael Ellis motivational. It was unlike anything I had ever seen before, right? It was definitely like a higher caliber of training than I was used to. So I became very excited with that, and I trained with Vera literally every single day, but with the purpose of learning, right? And I remember learning very young. I got Vinny very shortly after I got Vera, because I realized Vera wasn't a dog that I could do all of those things with. She wasn't designed for it, and I needed another dog to be able to do those things with so I can continue to learn, right? So it's really hard to say because I never had that, like I said, like dog owner life. It was pretty much since I've owned a dog, I have been training, right? And learning about training and trying to make myself a better trainer.
I think that's also because you were doing that form of training, you know.
Sure. I agree.
You know, that gives you more of that discipline feel too, than maybe just a trainer that's coming in just to do, like pet owned kind of training. You kind of had both sides immediately.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's why I had a fairly short learning curve with a lot of things, is because I always say I think I got very, very lucky, like with what I got involved with very early on, because it went from basic prong collar training, basically. Like I was working with a guy that trained under Paramount, and just learning like here's like leash work and stuff like that. Then I started finding a bunch of positive only trainers, right? That I was kind of a part of this group, Pitbull Zen, for a little bit. They fucking hated me because I was never full like drinking the Kool-Aid of the positive only training, right? I always used the prong collar and stuff with Vera, but I did appreciate that like motivational, like here's how we teach things and stuff like that kind of aspect, and I definitely experimented with it a lot, right? I tried to stray away from the prong sometimes and like use just a slip collar or something to see, can I do this with just the rewards? Then I realized limitations with that. Then I got jumped right into, I feel like, the best of both worlds, right? From like one extreme to the other, to like dead center middle of like create as much motivation as possible, but also create consequences for things.
Yep.
And then from there, like it obviously went all different extremes and stuff. But anyways, you have more points?
Yeah, I think actually, I think it's kind of funny, like listening to you kind of like break down like that you went to 3 different trainers. Like what made you want to like move on from trainer to trainer? Just
realizing
learning.
Limitations.
Got it.
Yeah, like so the whole time I wanted to learn, right? And I remember as soon as I started asking questions they didn't have answers for, I was like, okay, I need to find somebody else, right? So I remember when I was working with the first trainer, like I said, it was all leash training. And I distinctly remember one session, and this is nothing against this trainer, right? But I remember one session, we're sitting there and we're working leash training. And at this point, we had basically taught leash walking, sits, downs, staying, some come command work, stuff like that. And I remember he was getting ready to kind of demonstrate a couple different things, and he took one of his dogs out, and he was trying to get his dog to do a down, and the dog just would not do it. And I remember him sitting there and, leash pressuring the dog into a down, and the dog was just sitting there fighting it and fighting it and fighting it and fighting it. And I was just kind of like, all right, well, like, nothing against this person, but like they're limited with some of this stuff. They're not quite where I want to be with a lot of the training and stuff, right? Yeah. At the same time, like I said, I started seeing this Pitbull Zen group, and a lot of people were posting videos just of them doing like tricks and like rally obedience and stuff like that, because it's very popular in the dog training world, or in the positive only world and stuff. And I was just like, oh, this seems very different, right? This seems like something I just like want to learn a little bit about and stuff. So like I said, I started kind of bouncing around with that. But like I said, the whole time I kind of knew they were full of shit, I just appreciated the difference and wanted to just experiment with it as much as I could, And then from there, it kind of overlapped with when I found Rob, because Jake and I had known Jake forever through music and through tattoos and stuff like that. And I kept seeing him post videos. He started working for Rob, I think like 6 months before I did, something like that. And I kept seeing him post these videos of him working with Malinois and like doing all this kind of stuff. And I was just like, fuck, that looks sweet. I don't know what it is, but I want a part of that. So, and Jake, he used to always post stuff like, I'm working with police dogs today and doing this and doing that. And they weren't actually police dogs, but it it looked like it was a police dog or something. And I was just like, that's fucking awesome. So I just started going and hanging out there. And I remember Rob, the owner of the company, hustled me on a $1,500 training package. And at the time I was like 19 or 20. Like I didn't have $1,500.
Yeah.
Right? I remember I slapped it on a credit card. Thanks, Dave Ramsey.
Yeah.
And I started going there, and I remember just being like, I want to be around this stuff. Like, I want to learn about this kind of stuff. So, like, yeah, I'd like to come to my sessions, but can I just, like, hang out, right? And he was like, yeah. And I literally went there every single day when I got off work. I worked till, like, 4 o'clock. I went home. I picked up Vera. I drove straight there, and I hung out there till probably 9 p.m. every single night. And I did that for months. And then finally, I was working in a factory at the time. I wasn't happy there. I was like, man, I really would like to work doing this. And he offered me a job, and I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, down. And it was a bullshit salary position. I was getting paid $400 a week, which is not that much money for a full-time job, and that's the only thing that you're doing. And I was working probably, I don't know, I mean, I would get in at 7 in the morning. I would probably stay there till about 5 or 6 every single day, and I typically worked about 6 days a week. So a long time getting paid fucking jack shit for it, but I was learning, right? And I had this, it was the perfect situation because it was awful as far as the job itself is actually concerned, but I had this unlimited supply of dogs to be able to experiment with, Yeah. And he was never there. Rob was never there, so I had 100% control to be able to do whatever the fuck that I wanted to do with those dogs, So like I said, best and worst thing ever.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's how I kind of went from person to person, is just I kept wanting to learn more, right? When I get into something, like I have a very obsessive personality with things. Like I want to learn everything about that.
Right.
So,
yeah, so I actually had a really interesting conversation with one of my close friends who's a trainer the other day. And I guess coming back to your point of like this expectation of like what a trainer is, and like how you I think there's a lot of ego in the training world, and that's kind of like the
100%.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Personally, I think that's why. I don't know. I've never given a fuck about like Mondio and stuff for me, but like she said something.
That's like the most egotistical, like the competition, not just Mondio, the competition dog world. Oh my God. It's such a disaster.
That sounds exhausting.
That's a conversation for another time. But
yeah,
definitely.
It's not ever been my interest, but she said something that like, isn't it just so interesting that we're all just out here trying to be trainers, just trying to figure out what's best for these dogs who can't tell us what's best for them.
Yeah.
Like, and just the amount of just the way that everyone just thinks they're right. I don't know. I've done a lot of thinking about that, and I feel like there's like 50 different thoughts that I could say right now, but just thought that was a really interesting.
Well, keep rolling on that. So what does that make you feel, and how does that change the way you look at yourself being a dog trainer?
Well, I think that, like you said, just constantly wanting to know what other people are about, like what they're teaching, because I think you can probably learn something from any trainer,
100%.
If you just like kind of drop down those expectations of what you know. And I feel like with any profession, right? If you think you know it all, then
you stop learning. Exactly.
And I don't know. I don't know why this industry is so like cutthroat and hateful. Like
it's any industry though, honestly.
It is.
Like I would say dogs is a little bit more extreme, only because you have the emotions of we're dealing with living, breathing animals. We're not just selling a product, right? Or something that doesn't really have a huge impact on a life, right?
Yep.
So dog training specifically has that going for it. But I mean, we've been involved in so many different industries before, and I have friends and colleagues that are in different industries and businesses and stuff. And there's always that really cutthroat competitive edge of like, I think that what I'm doing is right. Now, here's the other side of the equation is if we didn't have that confidence that what you're doing is right, like that's how you believe in your product that you're selling, right? So like if you didn't believe in it and didn't defend it with everything that you have, like that's almost like I would be scared of, not feeling really confident in my product also, right?
I think you can have confidence without being cocky, though.
Sure,
or
I would
being
agree with that.
Mute to what other people are doing.
Yes, I think there's a balance with it, but I think that's where it comes from, right? Is having that like confidence of like I know what to do in this situation, and that's why I'm like standing behind what I do, kind of thing, right? And I don't know where the balance is with it, but I think that's all these industries. Is you feel confident in the product that you're putting out, which is what puts you into an egotistical state of mind, but you could flip over the edge where you just turn into a cocky asshole.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that in the media world. I
was going to
promise
ask you that. Yeah.
Oh, it's especially like wedding photography. I mean, wedding photographers will kill each other. I'm serious.
Really? Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah, I'm in a lot of like blogs and forums now. And
what do they hate on?
Oh my gosh, it's like someone will post a picture and then there's just like 90 comments on how their composure was awful and they would have done it this way and they would have edited this way and like they should have just went to me and blah 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 blah. It's like, God, shut up. It's like everyone has their own different eye, and I'm sure it's the same thing with dog training. I mean, you can only do it positively, or you can only do it this way or that way. People, like you said, they can't kind of put the shield down and they're like, okay, this is the way. Like,
this is the way.
Yeah, your way is not as good as mine.
No Mandalorian references here?
Yes.
Anybody watching?
This is the way. But I think the problem is people see a lot of success with the way that they do something.
Sure.
And then that's where they think, oh, I don't need to learn anymore. Just because, I've made so many thousands of dollars.
It's working, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's working. So they see someone else succeeding in some different sort of way, and they're just like, oh, that can't be working.
Yeah. And that's what kills companies, right? I mean, going to a business standpoint, like a lot of the books that I read talk about like evolving with the times, COVID, right? People need to adjust the way they're doing because you can't do the things you've always done, right?
Yeah.
So unless you're willing to adjust and be the head of the, revolution or whatever you want to call it, right? Like you're going to get left behind with things. And, people don't realize dog training is the same. It's an industry, right? I understand it's a skill we're putting out, but it's an industry and you have to be able to adjust and improve on what you're doing and do things differently as times are changing. Because even though dogs were trained still back when they used e-collars that basically were fucking tasers and choke chains and like crushing esophaguses and stuff with corrections, it's like, yeah, those dogs were trained, but like if you were still training that way just because it was working for you and it was, people were okay with it at the time, you would not be in business right now.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is a point that has nothing to do with kind of what we're talking about, but I was having an argument with someone on Facebook. Stupid me.
You're about the king of that lately.
Yeah, I know. Something about it was like
Josh, are you a troll?
Josh has kind of started trolling a little bit lately.
Yeah, it's just funny. I just find it so funny. People get so upset. But we were talking about like the minimum wage increase or whatever, that they're trying to pass. They're like, they hate small business. How can they want this to be passed? They're going to kill so many businesses. And I was just like, man, if a few dollars an hour for your employee is like going to kill your business, maybe you're not running your business very well.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it for maybe a bigger business, but like small businesses where I have one or two employees, like if your capital is not good enough to give someone like a few more dollars, maybe you're not running your business correctly. That was just my food for thought on that one.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a whole nother conversation. Obviously, we increased our minimum wage, obviously. So like I back that, but I don't know. That's a hard one. I do agree with you that I would say that my opinions on things vary from topic to topic as far as like which direction I'm kind of leaning. But I would agree that that's one where it's like, okay, cool. Like, and this goes to the whole, the other side where it's like, personal finance conversation and stuff like that. Like a lot of people don't know how to manage their money from a personal or a business standpoint. And what happens is they don't realize how much they actually have to share and give and help and improve and for themselves or for others. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's more so of how you're talking about, like, getting with the times. Like, you have to keep ahead of the curve just to keep your revenue coming in. I mean, if there's any way to innovate ever, you should try and do it.
I would agree. I also think, like, now that we're talking about, like, some business related things here, like, when it comes to, like, raising minimum wage, like, our staffing overhead is fucking ridiculous. Like, it scares the shit out of me every month when I see it. But,
of course. Yeah.
But that forces me to then, how do I grow this company and create more revenue so that I can continue to to afford that at that point. So I think that you always need that push, whether it's from yourself by creating, like, hey, I need to be able to keep up with this because I want to innovate in this direction. So I need to make this company be able to sustain that, or from, the personal sector of, whatever industry you're in, like, how do I continue improving myself to stay relevant in this world, right? Because I'm going to fall apart just like if I can't afford my bills.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I think that's a good way to look at this. Look at this. We're like, this is like a business dog training podcast. This is exciting.
Yeah. Well, and
Emily, you came to a fun one today.
Yeah.
Emily's like, we're talking about Caesar.
Yeah, before we get any farther, did you have any more points for?
Yeah, let's jump back to that for a second here.
Yeah,
so
I don't want to get too far away.
No, I think that actually, like, that all makes sense to me, though. You kind of answered my question of, like, you have to, not my question, but it just kind of improved my thought process of, like, you do have to be innovative. You have to be interesting. You have to be a cut above the rest. So I guess that's where this ego comes from in this industry. But
it caused you to be stagnant. The ego.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think ego just needs to be used in a very specific way. Like,
sure.
And that I'm glad we brought up the business part, but we're essentially just all translators for dogs,
Yeah,
like, just
100%.
And I just I think it's kind of funny just how much hate there is in between everything. So that was full circle.
And I'm thinking, like, how do you say his name? Sarasota Osudez?
Joe Mendez?
Yeah, what's his Instagram?
Osudez.
Yeah, I think what he had David come down. Like, people, like, trainers that are open to have other trainers come in and do seminars or talk with them, like, having that open communication with different trainers and maybe how they do things. I think that was a really beneficial thing for not only you and him, but the people that came there that are his clients as well, getting, here's another perspective on how maybe you would do something and he would do something.
Well, I think a lot of it is understanding where your level of expertise lies, right? So one thing that I look at a lot of times is, okay, cool. So, like, from a training standpoint, like behavioral modification, all that kind of stuff, like, I feel very damn confident in the work we do, right? From other standpoints, I think that there's a lot of reason why do people choose to go to some of these other places out there, right? As far as, dog training is concerned, or boarding or daycare or whatever it may be. There are things that I think other places are doing better with those types of things as well, right? Like, how do I verbalize this? Okay, so from a daycare standpoint, right? One direct example I can think of here. So Mary Jo, Kingston's owner, right? She has another dog, a German Shepherd, Heafy. She calls him Heafy, I believe.
That's a cute name.
Yeah, he's a funny dog. So he's Kingston's buddy, right? Like, they're living in the same house and stuff. And every Wednesday, she takes Kingston to daycare with us, and she takes Heafy to the Mutt Hut, right? Why does she take Heafy to the Mutt Hut?
It's probably
instead of Tuz.
I'm sure it's, like, a little bit more free, like, less boundaries. It has just, like, a fun presence to it.
Sure.
Everything. I'm not from Cleveland, but I've heard about the Mutt Hut multiple times, and I've heard really good things.
They have that reputation of, like, it's large packs, everybody's having fun, it's good. Since it's a little looser as far as the behavioral work and stuff like that is concerned, like, they're not quite as on top of the dogs and stuff like that, so they can allow them to open up a little bit more, right? Where ours is designed to be a very controlled environment. Though I think that's very good for 90% of dogs, I think there are those couple of dogs that would do fine in some of those other types of environments and potentially have a little more fun because they could loosen up more. They have more space. There's more dogs for them to play with and stuff like that, right? Now, we could spin into the conversation of, like, is that actually beneficial to them? Will that create problems in the long run? Potentially, right? I don't know, but I look at things like that then, and I think, okay, cool, not egotistical. Our daycare is fucking better than theirs. You should be bringing your dog to us. Instead, I look at what is the reason why she prefers that one, and how do I create our daycare where it finds the best of both worlds, where it can cater better to those types of people as well.
Sure.
Right? Whether that's, having different days that are like the free-for-all days, where it's like, not free-for-all days, but it's 100% only super social dogs that come to it, that we could let it just be this, like, knockout play, fucking day or whatever it may be, or other variations of that, right?
Yeah.
I try to look at things like that, where, we are a daycare company second, we're a training company first. So right. I think our daycare company is very, very good, right? I think we do a fantastic job with it. But since it's not our forte, I look at a lot of those other places and I look at what are the qualities that those companies have that are really good that I can adopt, right? That will help make ours even better. So.
No, and that's what we were talking about. You have to kind of make sure you don't ever get those blinders on, to see why, maybe that's, now I see why you would take your dog to the mutt hut. The other, your other dog, maybe that's what that one needs,
Sure.
And because I think it's easy to get, especially in my field, to get kind of butthurt if you have a client and then you see him somewhere else and you're like, you got photos from somebody else,
Fair. I get it. And I would get pissed at that from a training standpoint. We've almost never had that happen before. I think it's been maybe like, I could probably count on less than one hand how many times that's actually happened.
Yeah.
Right? But that's because that area is my forte, right? Like, so I would ask you then, if your clients are, like, when you're seeing that, is it people that are going to other photographers for different types of work? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Like if you did their business photography and then they wanted like family photos done or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's more of that, like if you saw a dog at your daycare and then they went to another daycare, you'd be like, okay, but that's not your forte. I definitely get that because, I've done quite a few different varieties of photography in my past. And obviously if it's something that I wasn't the best at and you went to someone that's their full-time gig, I understand. I can't be really upset about that.
Well, I get it though. I mean, there's still, we have some clients that will come to us and they had been going to other daycares for a long time, and they continue going to those daycares post training and stuff like that. And I'm just kind of like, man, give ours a chance.
Yeah,
we do a good job.
Yeah, exactly.
I think there is something to be said though too, is also the relationship you have with that other business or like that maybe that other photographer, because you'd probably never be upset if someone went to Brittany. So it's like all just like the respect you have, I think.
Hi Brittany, we're name dropping you.
Yeah.
Again.
Hi Brittany.
She listens all the time.
I will. Yeah. If someone was like, newborn photos, should I go to Josh or Brittany? I'd be like, take my name out of that hat, throw it in the garbage. You go to Brittany right now. Yeah.
You shut up and you go there.
Yeah. No, I definitely get that. And I think this is something for him too, like outside, like out of state people, like you'll be like, oh yeah, I know somebody that you might be able to go to there.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing. Like, yeah, I would much rather you go to Brittany for that,
Though we've been running into a lot lately. I'll tell you, fucking New York City, we've had a couple of clients. We got, I think, 1 or 2 more dogs coming in from New York City for a board and train that, I love Blake and Dream Come True Canine over there, but they are just so fucking expensive. People can't afford it, the person that called and booked yesterday, they were going to go to him, but the similar program that we do is over $6,000 with him. That's double what we charge, right?
Yeah.
So you could fucking fly out to Cleveland, you could spend a whole goddamn week here training with us after your board and train and fly back home, and it'll still be cheaper, including you taking off work, than if you just went and did it there.
Wow.
He's got those New York prices.
I know, but holy shit, that's so much money.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, listen, I think that's cool. We were looking at even, some of our direct, we were talking about competition or something, learning from other trainers, whatever. Oh, yeah, getting the same point across. This bouncing around all over the place here. I've invited a bunch of trainers from around here on the podcast, right? Like, I'm down to talk to anybody about those types of things because I think everybody has a very interesting way of articulating the same point across, right? Mm-hmm. And I love hearing everybody else's different points on things and different sides of things and stuff. And it's always going to do one of two things. It's going to force you to look at a situation differently or reinforce your point of view, right? And I think those are really important things to do. I try to read books and learn about all sorts of dog trainers in different avenues or ways that they do it in ways that I completely disagree with, to try to find, like, all these people are doing these things because they believe in them, right?
Sure.
Everybody is doing these things because they really believe that they work or they're the correct way to do it. So why does that person feel that way about that specific thing? You know, I want to learn that all the time.
Yeah. Understand their mindset.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Kind of picking their brain of why do you look at it differently than I do?
Yep.
I think that's a wonderful, like, a wonderful way to look at it.
And here's the thing, right? I think every one of these trainers is typically successful in their own way with certain types of people, right? So, going back to the conversation about how we all live very different lives with our dogs, right? Somebody that wants to live a life with their dogs like I do, I am going to be a good trainer for them because I'm going to be able to teach them exactly how I do those things, right? Somebody that lives a life like Bridget lives with her dogs, right? Like a lot of the rescue worlds and stuff. I think she's going to do very successfully with that kind of stuff because she has that insight into that world and understands it on a really deep level that I personally do not, right? And I think that that's a cool thing about having a lot of different types of trainers in a company is, you know, as we get further along with things and everybody continues to develop and grow, we're going to be able to hand select trainers for certain people, I think, too, you know? I think that's a cool thing. And a lot of these other trainers, right, if I can understand their points of view and their story behind it, right, I'm going to be able to understand my clients better as well.
Yeah.
So, Emily, any other points?
Let's just normalize trainers liking other trainers.
Normalize trainers liking other trainers.
Peace and love.
Peace and love. Sweet. I think that's pretty cool. Okay, cool. So what we're going to do here is we are going to dive into, first and foremost, a couple of follow-up questions that we got post last podcast. So let me pull those up real quick here. Okay, so okay, all right. So this one, we're going to dive right into this here. So Courtney, Pawnchky's owner, she was a little late to the party. She had a couple of really good questions that we've asked in the past. She had asked a lot of questions about the soundboard related stuff, and she asked very good questions here. So what I want to do is I want to dive into these couple questions first. From there, we'll see how much time we have and see if we actually have time to do anything else, or today's going to be another just random show. So we're going to get started here. Emily, pay attention to the question.
Okay.
Because you're going to be the first one to answer this.
Okay. I'm ready.
Courtney asks, I'm late to the party, but I'd love if in the future you could discuss the role genetics play in behavior. But just as importantly, emphasize how most of these behaviors can be managed with proper training. If they couldn't, you wouldn't have the success you do. I have a lot of owners in my life who fall into the "that's just how he is" trap and use genetics as an excuse to avoid consistent training. I've seen you work your magic in so many ways, and I know in most cases genetics don't inhibit real tangible progress. I know there are exceptions to this, but I'm talking about the dogs who could easily become well-balanced with firmer structure and consistency.
I'm confused, I suppose, what the question is.
Okay, so what role do genetics play in behaviors? And how do people not use that as an excuse for saying, my dog is just the way he is? He's just scared and barks at people, or he's just fucking, amped up and will pull on the walk or be reactive or do any of those types of things.
Well, I think genetics plays a part in every dog, whether they're a super reactive dog or genetics is obviously like the makeup of everything, but you don't want to sit there and make excuses for that because maybe a dog tends to be like genetically more fearful. Like obviously like breeds have standards and stuff with behaviors, but don't you want to enhance your dog's life to the best of its ability? So giving them that structure and guidance is going to help any dog, whether it's maybe a dog will always be somewhat reactive with things, but you can improve its life by giving them that.
I would agree. I would say that the dog can always do better, first off, right? There's never going to be this stagnant, like this is the way he is, and I'm not going to be able to improve on it at all, because here's the thing. whether a dog is genetic. So first off, the role genetics play in behaviors, right? So you could have dogs that are genetically fearful, genetically super, super amped up, genetically anxious, genetically like just neurotic and moving all the time and stuff like that. And each one of those genetics is going. All right. I don't know what just happened. We had a minor disk issue on the computer here. So we're back. So right before we left off there, we were discussing genetics. We were discussing how genetics can play a role. Man, that was really weird. We almost thought we lost this entire hour and 5 minutes that we've done so far. But we didn't.
Throw the equipment.
Everything is okay.
It's all good.
Is fine. All right. Anyways, so genetics, right? You can create these crazy neurotic aroused behaviors. They could turn into all sorts of behavioral issues. Fearful dogs genetically might try to be flight risks. They might try to bite when they get stressed out or cornered. Neurotic dogs are genetically going to have things like crate or confinement anxiety. They're going to be predisposed to have a really hard time settling, and things like duration work, so downstays, bedstays, stuff like that are going to be notoriously probably a little bit harder for them. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Genetically really confident or stable dogs, they're going to push back a lot. You're going to have a really hard time, quote unquote, breaking them and getting them into a compliant state of mind. So genetics plays everything, like Emily was saying, when it comes to behavioral issues, right? If, every dog has a genetic makeup and it's always going to lean or sway one way or another. So the big thing I try to look at is when you have those genetics, what are the issues your dog is going to be a little bit more predisposed to having, and what sorts of communication or techniques do I need to implement to get as much leverage as possible to work through those things, right? If you have a genetically fearful dog, like as much as everybody else, that dog will always be fearful to an extent. But can you look at, one thing I always ask is, can you look at what are the specific things the dog does when they're fearful, and how do I work through those specific issues or improve on them, right? Deli is genetically a fearful dog sometimes, right? So because of that, I look at what does she do when she's fearful and how do I work through it, right? When she gets scared, she freezes, right? And when she freezes, one of two things will happen. One, if she gets startled by something, she'll make the loudest, most dramatic scream jump in the world, right? We've all seen it before, right? And two is when she freezes, she becomes non-compliant. So if I try to tell her to come when she's scared, a lot of times she'll just stand there with this like blank whale look, like, I don't know. So what do? We work her through that, right? We build motivation with her throughout the training process to try to help with that fearfulness. And then in addition to that, we create communication to be able to work her past it when she's scared, right? So I know when I tell her come, no matter if she's scared or not, I have a way to get her to do it physically, right? So she kind of unlocks up. Vinny is genetically anxious, right? So because of that, I practice a lot of duration work with him in the past. I allow him to expend that energy, and then I teach him to slow down and kind of focus and stuff, et cetera, right? So to answer the question, like you were saying, like, why would you limit yourself with, okay, my dog is fearful and they have these issues, as opposed to, well, if you have the training, you could stop the specific issues you're having when the dog is in that genetically whatever state of mind.
Right. I just blanked. I totally agree.
I know, we're all brain farted right now from all that chaos. Like, we just had to pause for like 20 minutes to like fix that. So we lost track.
I feel like genetics can also be a positive thing, and I think we oftentimes talk about them as a negative or like something that's limiting to them, but genetics can also, be the reason that you choose a dog, right? You like those things about it. So, yeah, I think just going back to you still have to enforce those same rules and boundaries. It's just, as an owner and as trainers, how do you look at a dog, factor in those genetics, but still be successful? Yeah,
I agree. And then I think another side of the equation too is you have to accept those genetics, right? You can't pretend like they're this worst thing and that they don't exist, right? Like, look at, I know I either have clients or know people who have, say, like kids with autism, right? And if you were to look at that and just be like, well, like, there's nothing I could do to make his life any better because that's just the way that he is. Like, God, what a fucking morbid state of mind that would be, right? There are people out there that have kids with autism or Down syndrome or any like really debilitating genetic disorder that are able to provide these really, really fantastic lives for those individuals still, right? And it's because they understand them. They understand how to work through those issues or communicate more effectively with them. and understand what that individual needs in order to thrive, or at least thrive to the best that they can, right? Though that may not be what you think of when you think of, a great, fantastic person or dog or whatever it may be, or a fulfilled person or dog, I should say, right? That doesn't mean that it's not the case, right?
I'm glad you said that. I was thinking of that correlation.
I've never made that correlation before until right now, and it makes so much sense, right? Like, how could you just say, like, these people can't live great lives, right? Or these dogs, because they're a little scared, right, or a little anxious, that they can't live great lives.
It goes back to that, like, Munchausen's kind of mentality that we have with dogs. Like, why do we
I don't know what that word means.
But we talk you know what Munchausen's by proxy is.
Oh, didn't we kind of talk about
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit.
Like, people want to keep their dogs sick and scared, I think, because it makes them, I don't know, it makes them feel better? What?
Sure.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Basically.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So to answer the question, like I said, like, I think every dog has a potential that they can meet, right? And I think every dog can improve and do better and better and better when it comes to that. And I think it's doing a disservice to not understand the dog better, understand their issues better, and understand that just because this dog doesn't learn things or pick things up like some other dogs do, doesn't mean that you can't figure out what you're doing wrong with communicating with that dog to make them understand your needs and what you want and their needs better. Right? So I think it's a pretty good question. I feel like we probably would have rolled on that a little bit more, but whatever. Anyways, she had a follow-up question to this, so we're going to keep rolling on it.
Okay.
So a follow-up question I'd love to hear your answer to. It's clear that a lot of your cases aren't the direct result of abuse, as most people assume. When people ask why a dog is behaving the way they are, you typically say it's due to genetics. In your experience, though, do you feel early intervention, i.e. a training program like yours, would have prevented behaviors from manifesting so severely? If so, in some, most, or all of the cases. Additionally, how do you feel the responsibility lies in the client's lap for not understanding the dog's needs and providing structure sooner? I agree with the general statement, they're not a bad breed, it's how you raise them, but most people say this referring to loved versus abused, whereas I think structured versus unstructured. Fucking good questions.
Yeah, this is a really good question.
Like, really, really, like, last week's questions were awesome. This question fucking rules.
Yeah.
These are questions that are worded in very, very just mature ways, I feel like, that are good to adjust. So, Emily, you want to dive into that?
Yeah, there's so many facets to it. Give me a second to kind of process that. So, I guess first and foremost, the abuse thing. Once again, I don't know why people have gotten into that mentality that they were abused.
It's the rescue thing, right? So, like, it helps make those dogs more adoptable, I think, by playing the sympathy card.
Yeah.
I really think that's the root of it, right?
It seeped into, like, people who are going to breeders, though. I had a client the other day, and they're like, we've had him since 8 weeks old. We just don't know what happened.
Yeah.
And I guess kind of leading into, if you start setting that foundation, and it doesn't have to be, like, if you set a foundation, you probably won't have to do as much or any behavioral modification, right? If you're just setting that tone and teaching them as they grow.
Well, I mean, this is exactly what we just talked about, where genetics. So the aggression isn't the genetics, right? The crate anxiety is not the genetics, right? The dog is more predisposed to having those behavioral issues because of the genetics of being fearful or neurotic or whatever it may be. But the actual behavioral issue you're seeing is just a result of the genetics, not the genetics themselves. So training helps you teach the dog to control those genetics. And like I said, it teaches you to communicate with them better, and it teaches you to understand them better so that you don't allow them to rehearse those things in the first place, right? If a dog is genetically anxious and when they get scared, they go and jump all over you and crawl into your lap. I worked with a dog the other day that a couple sessions in, we were doing recall training, and the dog got stressed out, and their response was literally climb. This was a golden retriever, right? Pretty big dog. Climb onto the person's head. Like, legitimately, the dog crawled into their lap fully and was literally, like, getting on top of the person's head, right? I understand the dog is scared, and that's why they're doing those things. So the fearful genetic behavior is causing it to display in that, but that is a learned behavior. That is the dog learning that they can do those things, right? That is a dog learning, when I get scared, I could frantically do this dangerous or just not appropriate behavior. And through training, if when that dog was fucking 10 weeks old, the first time that they saw the dog try to do that when they were scared, they told the dog, hey, knock it off. You can't do that, right? That's going to teach the dog to not respond so dramatically to the fear, right?
Absolutely. But can you picture like a little 8-week-old golden puppy just being afraid of like something dropping? And of course, I think it's naturally for people to be like, oh, they're there, and that's just how it gets rolling.
And that's the non-understanding of things, right? So as far as how much does it fall into the person's lap, I think when you're dealing with extreme genetic behaviors, I think that I don't ever blame people for like not knowing what to do. I do blame them for, as they start to see that behavioral issue getting worse, not trying to seek the answers for it though.
That's a good point.
Right? That's where I see the problem lie. Now, that could be that they seeked out answers for it with the wrong people and got the wrong advice, and that I still would not blame on them then because they tried to do the right thing. But all of this is misinformation, right?
Yeah, there's some tough cases too, right?
Of course.
I think the dogs that are extremely fearful are the ones that, as trainers, it's easy to kind of get impatient with. And it's not, I mean, we see that pretty frequently too, right? Where people come after 1 or 2 other training programs.
I think a lot of behavioral issues that you see that are based on like poor genetics, like one of 2 things. One, most of them are learned behaviors, right? Which means that the dog realized very early on when they do something, it works in accomplishing what they want. If a dog is fearful or anxious or whatever it may be, the biggest thing they want is to feel like they have control over the situation, right? And they tend to learn that through doing dangerous things because a lot of dangerous things gain control of situations. Aggressive displays, jumping, frantic behaviors, breaking out of things, stuff like that, right? So I think you got to be aware of that. Now, our job always, when we're working with genetic cases, I always say, is through the training and through creating consequences and boundaries for some of those dangerous behaviors and blocking some of those learned behaviors, our job or our goal is to essentially make the exciting things less exciting and the scary things less scary, right? So if a dog is super, super amped up and having these peaks and like super excited, super scared, which is kind of what we'll see in these genetics cases, right? What I want to do is I want to find harmony where they don't have these spikes of like I get super, super pumped up, then I get super, super, super scared. I want to calm them down in those excitable situations, and I want to create consequences for dangerous, fearful behaviors so they learn to work through those types of things so they wind up sitting somewhere in the middle with it, right? And I feel like that is how you create balance.
Is this an inside joke that I missed?
Well,
it was last
2 episodes. We
ended
the episode talking about how to find more balance with your dogs. So we keep falling on that word.
Yeah. And I think a lot of this comes to a point that you made for your dog's name, B, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. When we were talking about B in the crate and like how you have to have them unlearn things that they learned maybe while they were at the kennel, or whatever. And I think the danger of having this backstory of, oh, they were abused and everything. Well, all these things that they've learned that were bad, now people are like, oh, maybe I can't touch that because, this dog's been abused or whatever,
It puts a shield over it.
Yeah, exactly.
Where you don't want to touch it because it's like, shit, if this dog really was like beaten or neglected and stuff like that, well, like these things I'm going to need to do are seemingly mean to get the dog to stop doing this
exactly.
stuff, right?
So now
I'm going to create more behavioral issues because of it.
Yeah, and those things they've learned that are wrong and that, they get comfortable in doing get worse and worse and worse because you decided that, oh, I can't stop this behavior because then I'm making the dog have PTSD, basically.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that's bad.
And what's interesting is, and this is something I tell clients all the time, is, I have seen dogs that have been like severely neglected or in poor situations that are some of the most happy, carefree dogs in the world. And then I've seen dogs that like have lived with owners since they were puppies. Nothing bad happened to them. They came from fantastic breeders, et cetera, that are some of the most genetically messed up dogs I've ever seen in my life. So you can't pin it on that, right? It will always pretty much be genetics. I have rarely seen cases where it's been truly a result of like how they were raised, right? Even those ones, how they were raised, like I said, there's usually a genetic component at play with it.
So do you think some, all, none, as far as that question goes, with starting that foundation early?
Yeah, I think it depends on the dog as far as how much you're going to stop that. I am very curious to see, as we look into, like Kate and I are looking to possibly get a puppy, and I think I'm curious to see as I am raising a dog, like what sorts of things pop up that I just address on the spot that, seemingly would have turned into bigger problems later on, So I think that'll be really interesting to see.
Well, I think too, asking like if you set that foundation, some, all, or none, you're still like have 12 years of life. There could be a move, there could be some sort of factor that you're going to hit in like with that dog. So I think setting that foundation, but still there's going to be other variables where maybe you get lazy or you haven't kept that, or something they've never seen.
I mean, there's a reason why we see a lot of dogs come in at like 2, 3, 4, 5, and they start seeing behavioral issues later on in the dog's life when something big happens and changes. But I think a lot of it is the people didn't establish structure early on or communication early on, so they weren't able to address those issues as they popped up, right? Yeah. So those issues, though the dog is still genetically, right? Again, you don't change the genetics, right? You learn how to communicate through the genetics better, right? So if you don't have the communication at play, even though you may have managed things up until this point, those genetics are still going to pop up somewhere else where they start the process of essentially learning a behavior. The first time they decide to growl at somebody or resource guard food or do this or do that, right? And you don't address it, it will get stronger over time still, right? Because the genetics never change. So you just have to be aware of the dog's genetics for the lifespan of the dog, right? To stop all of those things as they appear. It's not like you're not gonna stop it as a puppy, where it's like, okay, cool, we did the training as a puppy, so now we're never gonna run into issues, right? You still have the dog that you have, so you got to be aware of that, right? And you got to be aware of, as things pop up, addressing them immediately, and having that structure allows you to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
So, interesting conversation. All right, Courtney. Hope that helps.
Good questions.
Great question.
Right, we have great fans.
Great fans.
Great fans, great questions.
All right. This is kind of a generic question, but this will be an easy one to answer for you, Emily. Why question.
Can't Josh answer it?
Josh probably can. Josh, I want you to try to answer this question first.
Wow, thanks, Emily.
And then we'll tell you.
And then you'll tell me how wrong I am.
All right. This question is from Tiffany. Tiffany asks, if your dog knows sit down in place, but fails to hold the stay for very long, how can you improve that? I see your stories that the pups hold their stay on their bed. We recently started using an e-collar and are being trained on it. Just having a hard time mastering this. What's the issue? If the dog knows it, but isn't doing it?
They're not keeping the dog accountable. They're not correcting and bringing the dog back to the spot. Am I right?
I mean, it's motivation, right?
Yeah, motivation.
The dog is not motivated to do it if they know it. Now, here's the key. Most people say their dogs know something where the dog knows a variation of it, or they know a pattern, but they don't actually know the command, right? Let's take the come command, for example, right? If you have a dog that's a stage 5 clinger, right? Like real creepy, like weird kid in high school that just follows you around all the time, right?
That's a stressful situation for me. Dogs like that, I'm like, oh God.
So if you have one of these clinger dogs and the dog just loves being around you so much that every time you say come, the dog comes, does that mean the dog knows the come command?
No. They just know, I want to be by you.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and how do you get there, though? You make sure that if you're outside, maybe using like a longer leash and whatnot, can you tell them to come every time and they're doing it? That's how, because I use this all the time now. It's the clarity motivation thing. Are they clear in every environment?
Yep.
Are they doing it off the first time you're asking?
Yeah. And one way to test it is that, that kind of situation where the dog just likes being around you. A lot of people would think the dog knows the come command, where it's like, no, the dog doesn't know the come command. The dog just likes being next to you. But if somebody else says the come command and enforces it, will the dog know what to do? Probably not, right?
Yep.
Just like, we get this one a lot when we're teaching the bed command. all of my clients say when we start it, and they're joking when they say it, but they're like, psh, my dog knows this one really well. They sleep on their bed all the time.
Oh my God.
Why is that false, Emily?
Can you verbally tell your dog bed? Are they getting on it right off the bat? You know, like, yeah, they'll go to their bed, but can you ring your doorbell? Are they going to stay there? You know, like.
The dog goes to their bed when they want to go to their bed. No differently than my dog lays down at the house all the time. He knows down. Yeah, the dog is in the down position, but dogs do these things on their own for their own reasons.
Yeah.
Right? This is something I got from Brandon Fouché, who I used to talk about a lot. Right? Brandon was a trainer out in California. He was a very odd guy. He's not very popular, but like he has some very interesting views on dog training and dog socialization and stuff. Brandon used to say, dogs know all of these commands. They know sit down and stay, but they do them for their own reasons. Right? Mm-hmm. Sitting is, the first step to rest, right? Dogs do it before they start relaxing and resting. Down is a dog resting, right? That doesn't mean they know those commands, right? We are physically making the dog do those things. Just like the conversation we had the other day where we were talking about, if you tell me, David, go lay on your bed, does that mean I'm tired? Right?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't mean I'm tired. It means you're forcing me to do that.
Yep.
But if I just go and lay down on my bed because I want to go take a nap, right? That also doesn't mean I know the command of go lay on your bed.
Yeah, I'm just tired.
Yeah, exactly, right? So we have to, though the dog may know how to physically get into those positions and do those different things, that doesn't necessarily mean that they know the command of doing those things, right? Mm-hmm. So how do we prove those things, right? We make sure the dog can do it in different environments, like you were saying. We make sure that it's clear in different contexts. We've generalized it. With the come command, it's funny. We'll have the owner do it, and the owner will do it 9,000 times correctly because the dog just likes being by them. But then I go to do it, and the dog's like, whoa, I have no clue what's happening right now, right? Mm-hmm. So equating this back to the question here, the first step is, does your dog actually know the command? Right? Or does the dog know the verbal, hey, go and lay on this object? Or do you just physically take the dog to it and put them on it every time? And if that's the case, you have to teach the dog to first and foremost understand the command really clearly. From there, it's a motivation issue, right? Mm-hmm. If the dog is not doing it, you have to do something every time the dog does not do it that the dog cares enough about. And you're starting e-collar training now, so that will help. But a lot of people get caught on not creating enough motivation for a known behavior, right? Mm-hmm. Worked with a client the other day. They have a German Shepherd. Dog's been through 2 other trainers before, and the lady couldn't understand why the dog was still having issues with holding bed stays and not focusing through certain situations. The dog was getting reactive and this and that, and she was caught up on the dog works at a 14 on the e-collar, right? And we don't go above a 14 because that's his working level. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, your dog doesn't care about that level, right? If you're telling me right now, my dog knows his commands, because that's what she was very adamant on. My dog knows sit down, place, this, that, right? All right. Well, if you're telling me he knows it, that means he is choosing. He's making a choice not to do it in this situation, which means that we need to make sure we're holding the dog accountable enough where he chooses to do it, right? So that's the key with all of this stuff. And you can do that any way you want to, as long as the dog cares about it, right? Mm-hmm. But it's all about creating motivation with it. Emily, in her case right now, if you could give her a detailed step-by-step of what you would do right now with this dog to get this dog to do better with staying on that bed, what would you do?
I'm really glad you asked. First, I would make sure that I would just take it slow, break it down. It's almost like how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Is my dog getting on there every time? And not even by giving that verbal command first, making sure that they're physically getting all 4 paws, starting with that clarity. Once you've done that successfully, then adding the verbal, making sure that they're getting on the bed with the verbal command. I would start to probably add an e-collar at a lower level once you started adding the verbal, and then offering leash help after that. Getting that successful, I would say that would probably take you, depending on the dog, if you're consistently doing this for like 15, 20 minutes every day, your dog's going to be getting on there with, I would say, probably within a week tops.
As long as the dog cares enough about the reward you're giving them for getting onto it or the correction for not getting onto it.
Yeah, and you can definitely reward them every time they get on too, like with their kibble, with a treat, but making sure that they're doing it and then starting to hold them more accountable with duration with it. and starting your duration off slow, keeping the expectations realistic, and then just building on that duration and building on the distractions. And then at the end, just making sure that knowing that the level on your e-collar is going to change dependent on the distraction, dependent on if there's a storm and your dog is fearful during a storm, plan on having that e-collar really high. Mm-hmm. That's probably where the loophole is happening, though, with the duration. You're not motivating the dog to stay there.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. We also have step-by-step YouTube videos on how to do this on Miracle Canine Training YouTube.com/Miracle Canine Training. Find DIY how to get your dog to stay on the bed with an e-collar trick.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, you got to get the dog care enough about it and take it step by step. Like she was saying, make sure the dog is physically getting onto the bed first. They're understanding the command clearly. Layer your e-collar pressure into that, then switch to using corrections that the dog cares enough about.
Yeah.
Simple. All right. That's for you, Tiffany. All right, we got one more. Oh, shit. No, we actually have a really good one we got to wrap on. All right. This is a great question here. For dog training question, I'm getting a lot of clients, friends and family, and experience myself with my dogs. When dogs get too affectionate or is demanding affection, how do you handle that? For some people, like myself, it's really hard to full-on correct your dog when they're being cute. But I guess it's cute until it's not cute. Okay, I think this is a really, really good question because here's the thing. There's so many little, like demanding affection, right? There's so many degrees of that, right? And we tend to look at it sometimes as trainers as this black and white, right? Anything your dog is doing to try to solicit attention out of you is considered demanding affection, which is something that you should correct for, right? But it's not realistic necessarily to say every time the dog comes over and just kind of like nudges you or like walks up to you that you're going to give like a level gazillion correction for that and like seriously hold the dog accountable and stuff like that, because that does seem like unfair, right? That does seem like, yeah, like my dog is just doing this like kind of cute, seemingly innocent thing. So like, why would I totally nail them for that, right? So how do you handle that, and how do you find the balance? How do you find the balance between making sure that your dog understands that they can't have control over all of those different types of situations while being fair about it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So in my case, like B is super affectionate and like pushy. I'll let her come up to me for affection. I'm not always giving it to her. But something I do hold her accountable for is whenever she like puts her whole, like tries to put her whole body on top of me or anything, then I'll offer a correction there. So I think just having something really solid to hold them accountable to, like you can be cute and kind of want me to you can come up to me and maybe I'll give you a scratch, but not having that expectation. Mm-hmm. I don't know. You can add to that.
Well, I think that we have to understand that and this is something that's kind of nuanced with dog training here, there are different degrees of consequences that we can give for things as well, right?
Yeah.
We do keep it pretty black and white as far as like, you know, like the correction the dog needs to care about, make sure they care about it a lot. We talk about using e-collars and stuff for that a lot. But a lot of this, before I ever actually go in and address a lot of these like more emotionally charged things like that, I try to look at myself and I look at, what am I doing that is creating this problem first? Because here's the thing. If your dog is nonstop, constantly demanding affection from you, like all the time kind of thing, there's likely situations where you're reinforcing it, right? A dog is not going to repeatedly do something that doesn't work, right?
Yep.
I forgot who used this example. Oh, yeah, it was actually in this book we talked about last time of a dog that has digging issues is not going to sit there and dig on the sidewalk all day long because the sidewalk doesn't give, right? That's correct, right? They're not going to waste their time doing something that never achieves the goal that they want because they're learned behaviors, right? Now, as humans, we have to understand that we're not necessarily going to be as consistent with this as we want to, right? Even myself, right? There are absolutely times where our dogs come up to us and like do something cute and I look at it and I'm like, oh, here's a little scratch, right? It happens, right? So because of that, I have to look at already, because I'm being a little bit inconsistent about this, I have to be a little bit fair when it comes to how I'm correcting for it in other situations, right? Because if I am allowing it even one time a week, I'm not going to correct full go for this behavioral issue when the dog does it, right? Because again, that would not be fair. So I try to implement, first and foremost, controlling what I'm doing better, making sure that it happens as infrequently as possible to not reinforce it at all. And then from there, I try to be consistent about just verbally letting the dog know that I don't like what they're doing, right? Or doing something that the dog understands, at least says, hey, I don't like that, right? That doesn't necessarily mean an e-collar correction. My dog very frequently has e-collars on in the house, right? That could be something as simple as if they come up to me, giving them a little shoo away. That could be like a little bop on the nose. It could be any number of things of me telling them, hey, you need to go do something else right now, right? From there, if I want to give affection to them or, get them to interact with me or something, I'll make them do something for that affection, right? So I make them do compliant things in order for me to give them affection, whether it's they're sitting next to me and if Vinny's looking real cute and his, chin is on my knee or something like that, I'll tell him to sit, right? And the second he sits, then I'll give him affection, right? So I'm making sure I'm still to some degree controlling it, where I'm not correcting the behavior because I don't necessarily need to correct for that in that moment. I just need to make him realize I'm going to make you do something to earn this affection. You're not in charge of this social situation, right? So you could skew things and, sometimes you could handle it like that. Sometimes you could just shoo them away. Sometimes you can give actual consequences if they get too pushy with it, right? And I try to err on the side of, I guess, like interrupting the behaviors first a little bit more because I'm not necessarily the most consistent about always correcting for it.
Sure.
Right? I'll give more of a command then in that situation to get the dog compliant. Go ahead. You look like you're going to say something.
What are your... So with my dogs, I have a go command.
Sure.
And what that looks like is... And I taught it with like spatial pressure, just kind of like a few steps. And every time that they would turn around, that was kind of the cue. I would stop offering that spatial pressure. And now I can correct for it. Because I think most people can sense when their dog is being the most, So maybe in a moment, first, oh, B, you're being cute. Now you're getting on top of me and that's really fucking annoying.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm going to implement that go command. Do you...
I would agree with that. And I think everybody has their own variation of that. And I don't really teach it as a command in lessons and stuff because I don't want to reinforce not correcting the dog for things, obviously. But even in my case, and this is actually funny, I used to tell people this all the time, fuck off was a legitimate command in my house for a little bit there, right? It's hilarious. Vinny, to this day, if he comes up and I tell him to fuck off, he'll literally turn around and go do something else. So that is used in the same manner as yours is used, right? Or a lot of trainers will teach out, right? Out is kind of everybody's universal command for disengage from the thing that you're doing right now.
Sure.
Because here's the thing, if we look at corrections, right? And we look at those types of commands and stuff like that, corrections are reserved for things the dog is never allowed to do. Commands or interrupters are reserved for things that the dog is sometimes allowed to do. Now, if I'm already telling myself, I know with 100% certainty that I'm never going to be 100% consistent about correcting my dog every time they demand attention, right? It's not really fair for me to give big corrections for it then, right? Where I err on the side of I will give some sort of command, right, to get the dog to temporarily disengage from that thing, and then I will hold them firmly accountable for not doing that thing. And if I do that, I think it creates a lot more clarity and it becomes way more fair for the dog.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Does that make sense? So I think it's an interesting discussion because we don't talk about that a lot. We do talk about correcting for demanding attention a lot and stuff. And here's the thing. I do think that some owners early on in their training process need to just err on the side of correcting for it, right? The dog just needs to understand, hey, you need to stop pushing me so much, right? But a lot of times what that looks like in the dog training world with pet dogs is dogs actually doing behavioral issues we never want them to do, right? They demand attention by jumping on us. They demand attention by barking in our face. They demand attention by putting the paw on us or any number of those types of things, which those are things I don't want the dog to ever do, right?
Yeah.
But when you get into the more subtle forms of demanding attention, again, just the chin, right? Or the little nudge or the leaning against me or stuff like that, there are going to be times in the dog's day-to-day life that they do those things that they get away with it, right? So those more subtle things are very difficult to correct for and have the dog actually understand you're not ever allowed to do this thing, right? Because here's the thing. I think dogs need to know that they can communicate with us to an extent. Maybe not necessarily demanding attention, but they need to know that they could do something to get our attention still, right? There are times that Deli will do the head on the knee thing when she really needs to go outside, right?
Sure.
She'll come over like, come on. Like, we got to get up. We got to go, right? So if I'm correcting that sometimes and allowing it other times, it becomes unfair, right?
Yeah, sure. I think that kind of sounds like also just kind of a foundational break in communication, because honestly, when I don't want my dogs to come up to me, like they just kind of know, I'm just not like I'm not interested, and I feel like they'll just kind of go away,
Yep.
So like just really being aware of, is your dog controlling the narrative here?
Yep.
It sounds like it, because
you saying it sounds like my dog's controlling the narrative?
No. I'm saying if you feel like,
are you calling me out right now?
Yeah. What is going on with your dogs? So no,
I totally get what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
This goes back to the energy conversation, right? Like when we at all time, like I can project an energy that shows that like my dogs are like they know I'm not interested in what you guys are doing right now.
Yeah, you're being
right?
annoying. Yeah.
Like, and they're gonna kind of to some extent get that, right? Every now and then you're gonna get the extra pushy dogs that need that little extra fuck off, right? Mm-hmm. Or go away, or what was yours? Was it
go?
Yeah,
it's go,
right?
Man.
Or any of those types of things that you can enforce heavily, right? But you should be able to. We shouldn't have to be so black and white as far as like you have to correct the dog for it, because something like that, like when it comes to how we carry ourselves with our dogs and our dogs feeling like they control the narrative or whatever it may be, I think it's way more of a nuanced thing than just correcting the dog, right? It's more of what sorts of things am I doing that are creating this demanding energy right now?
Yeah.
Well,
and I think, but I guess to really simplify it for an owner though, I think your solution to maybe put them on a bed stay if they get up out of that, correct, like hold them really accountable for that, or put them in a down, same thing. Because I think that's where that respect and that dynamic is going to change if you're giving that kind of clarity.
Yeah, I would agree, because I mean that's a reason why you see behaviors like that with certain owners and not other owners, right? It's because they carry themselves in a particular way. But to really summarize that question, I think now that we've kind of talked through it a little bit, because I didn't really think about this one a whole lot until we started actually chatting about it, but I do think it's a great question because it's a very nuanced one. I think you have to look at, if you're not going to be 100 million% consistent about correcting for that, it's not fair for you to just jump right in and correct for those really subtle forms of demanding affection, right?
Yeah.
I think utilizing a command to interrupt it is much better, while making sure you're just not reinforcing it, right? Is everything, right? And then the more extreme examples of it that we tend to see, like I said, the jumping, the barking, the pawing, all those types of things, those things we need to correct firmly for, because no matter what, those start to sway into other categories of like just jumping on people in general, right? Or barking at in that over arousal stimulation at other things, right? Those things are much more clear and conscious things the dog does that you can correct for, where the other ones are not so much, right? And you could kind of inhibit or stop those things or reduce those things just by your interactions in general.
Yeah.
So, pretty good.
I got really lucky, I guess, because Bender could care less about affection usually. So I ignore him, and then after like 30 seconds, he's like, that's it.
Yeah, and that I think that goes to show that you have like a balanced dynamic in your house. He's not so. I feel like usually when dogs are just demanding affection, it's either pushy behavior or like panicked behavior. So clearly, maybe you got lucky, but I think you did the work.
True.
Yeah, I mean, and we've talked about this, right? Like, you're not a dog trainer, but you've been around us for over 3 years, right?
Definitely.
You've seen the root cause of a lot of these things, and you understand them better than your majority of owners, right?
Yeah.
So because of that, you, from the get-go, when you got a dog, were like, well, I know what not to do at least.
Definitely.
Right? So I'm sure that helped dramatically.
Definitely.
So, all right, we got one last question here. Hi there. I have a question regarding dogs with severe car anxiety. My cousin rescued a 4-year-old Shepherd mix almost a year ago, and she has had very bad anxiety in the car from the get-go. Her previous owners disclosed that this was an issue for them as well. She expressed anxiety in other situations too, but the car is a big trigger. She will pace, stress pant, and whine for the entirety of the ride, no matter how long it is. What are your suggestions to help with this? Also, I'm curious if you have any suggestions to help dogs that suffer from car sickness, aside from the medications. Thanks. Go.
car sickness and car anxiety, I would say, are probably things that go hand in hand. Maybe not. Some dogs, I'm not a medical professional, so I don't totally quote me on that. But I do think that usually if a dog's in a super anxious way, like it's panting a lot, like usually vomiting kind of adds to that. Personally, I use a crate in the car. I think that, and I've also taken the time to just make sure that my dog will just hold it down and wait at the doors going in and out too. And I think just giving the dog an expectation in the car, and is going to help them work through those anxieties, right?
Yeah, I think the expectation in the car is the big one here, right? So I think you have two types of car anxiety or car sickness, right? I think you have the car anxiety, which is just the frantic, I'm pumped up in this car and I'm bouncing around all over the place and getting myself stressed out because I'm essentially trapped in this big box that has no rules in it, right? And then I think you have the deep-rooted car sickness, which I equate to like motion sickness, right? So I hate roller coasters, right? I get really, really sick if I go on a roller coaster because I can't handle all of that motion and stuff.
I never knew that. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I like them. Like I want to go on them and I'll go on them sometimes. But if I go to like Cedar Point and ride like the Millennium, right, I'm knocked out for the next like 4 hours. Like I can't ride anything else after that, right? So whatever. So that's like a deep-rooted, not anxiety. That's a deep-rooted sickness that I get. I don't get anxious from it. I just like physically can't handle it, right? My body can't handle it. I've seen people that need to, like when they're in the car, they can't be a passenger in the car or else they'll get sick, right? Or they have to sit in the back seat for whatever reason. You got all these different forms of it, right? Car anxiety, right, I equate to there's never any rules in the car, right? There's no expectation. It's essentially the one area in the dog's life where it's 100% a free-for-all all the time and you're just trapped inside of this box, right? That's moving around. So because of that, the dogs get stressed. They bounce around from side to side. They pace around. They jump on the windows. They bark at everything outside. And it just creates this arousal that just goes up and up and up and up and up and up and up. With that, we control it by doing a couple of things, right? So one, creating consequences for some of the nonsense in there. So if the dog is barking out the window or pacing around all the time or jumping into the front seat or whatever it may be, we correct for those things. And we teach the dog, hey, there's rules in here. You got to pay attention. You got to slow down, right? You could also use a crate for that, and that will help stop some of the motion, which will help, right? Because sometimes that anxiety, that frantic moving around and stuff will create the sickness. The dog will get themselves so worked up that they throw up or whatever it may be. And the crate can help to manage the dog while you're working through some of those things. And frankly, the crate is safer. I mean, I use crates in my car as well. But if the dog is loose, we have to know we can keep him under control. We typically correct for the nonsense and enforce it down, stay in the car. That's always been our routine. And because we create that structure in there, we turn the car into a neutral place, right? You would never allow your children to jump from front seat to back seat, hang halfway out the window, and yell at all the kids that are walking down the street outside of it and everything. When kids get in the car, you tell them, sit down, buckle up, and shut up, right? So why do we allow our dogs to do anything else? We want this car to be like the funnest place in the world, and we think they should be able to hang their body halfway out, even though if you rear end somebody, the dog's going to get like their spine broken into a million pieces. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
We allow them to do all these unsafe behaviors and make it this fun place as opposed to like the cars for transportation, right? So we need to create structure, we need to create rules, and we need to not reinforce all of this aroused, excitable energy. And then from there, if you have the dog that has the really, really intense car sickness where it's that deep rooted, like they literally just lay down and drool and like puke. Personally, I don't think there's a training way to work through that because I think that is where you hit the point where it's a medical issue. But 99% of cases are the first one.
Yeah, I've never seen it like that severe where they can't be
transported. I mean, we've seen, they can be transported, but they'll puke like 100% of the time when they do it, or they'll just salivate like so uncontrollably. It's disgusting. I've seen it in a couple of dogs before. And it's pretty nasty.
I feel for owners that deal with that.
Yeah, for sure. So I think those are two types of anxiety you have, but you got to create structure and rules and, frankly, discipline, right? I always tell everybody, take your e-collar remote, set it on your center console, have it set really high, and the second the dog tries to jump in the front seat or bark out the window or jump on the window, you tell them no, tap that button. You can do it while you're driving. It's fine, right? You teach that dog to chill out and that there's rules in there, and almost 100% of the time that stops the problem.
So you won't even enforce it down, just correct for the...
I correct initially. Until we have the down taught, like say I'm doing one-on-ones, right? And then from there, put the dog in a down.
Okay.
Board and trains, we jump right into the down because it's easier.
Yeah.
And that always stops the issues as well.
Yeah. For some reason, too, I think people just, and I'll see this a lot with my clients, for whatever reason, we'll do like the whole send home. And then as they start to go to the car, they don't enforce that heel. They don't enforce that weight. And I don't know why there's this like disconnect. Like why are all boundaries going out the window?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they're moving the dog from place to place and in the car and stuff, they're usually in a rush, right?
True.
And they look at it as like, why do I need to enforce anything in here? The dog's not going to go anywhere, right? As opposed to realizing the safety issues with it and the training issues of that's going to bleed over into other parts of your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So pretty simple one, create structure in the car. All right, we're almost 2 hours in. We're going to wrap that up. Pretty good one, aside from almost losing all of our footage. I'm pretty pumped on it. We didn't get to read any of the book because we had all sorts of other things to talk about.
And that's fine.
You know what?
Yeah.
That's okay. Emily, any last thoughts?
No, I guess I'm going to go home and listen to the podcast. I have.
There you go.
Good catch up. Spend the whole day listening to everything.
On it.
All of it.
Thank
you.
The
whole day. Josh, last notes.
Nothing. Great questions. I love these, actually. I feel like I'm gaining knowledge as well.
Hell yeah.
Every time.
Yeah, I really enjoy
learning something new every day.
It is really fun. I feel like we're getting smoother and smoother with it as we go.
Yep.
So, all right, guys. If you want to learn more about us, head to miraclecanintraining.com. Find me on Instagram, Davidthedogtrainer. Find us on Instagram, miraclecanintraining.com. Emily, where are they going to find you? Don't find me. Actually, don't.
Yeah, just don't.
Wow.
No, it's Emily.Lynn with 2 N's .nickel on Instagram.
That's it. Find her.
You need Emily's canines or whatever.
Everybody's canines.
Everybody's canines.
Maybe.
Didn't Bridget change hers to Little Dog Trainer or something?
I know. I need to get on apparently building my own brand
maybe.
or something. No, it's Training Tiny Dogs.
Training Tiny Dogs.
Her Spork account is Training Tiny Dogs.
I was going to say it's Bridget Marie.
Yeah, it's no Spork.
Yeah, Spork's account is now a dog training account for small dogs.
Interesting.
I think it's just more of her account of training all of her little pack of nuggets.
Yeah.
I like it. All right. Josh, where are they going to find you?
Josh Dobey Productions, Instagram, Facebook, and www.joshdobeyproductions.com. You could be the beehive.
I've been thinking about switching up to the hive.
That's a good idea.
It's already
Or honeybee training.
I don't know about those.
Honeybee training.
That's a little nicer than I think.
We're honeybee training.
Yeah.
All right. All right, guys. We're ending that.